So instead of building, it's people in the church. Well, I am interested in what Scripture has to say, so I'm going to take a look there. Here's the first mention in my English Bible of the word church. So when Yeshua says, "On this rock I will build my church," and context is Peter had just said, "I think you're the Messiah," and then Yeshua says, "Upon this rock I will build my church." So reading that narrative, I think it's interesting and a clue to what church is that Yeshua did not go on to explain what church was to his disciples. He assumed they already know what church is, which is interesting because we only read about church in the New Testament, right? So if there was no New Testament church, no New Testament to explain church, how did they know what a church was? No church was in existence yet, right? And the disciples in the narrative, they didn't even ask what church was, which infers they already know what it is. It was very strange. Oh, and then we have the narrator, and he doesn't explain what church is either. He assumes his readers already know what church is, and he was writing in the first century, very early on. And all these clues together seem to indicate that the idea of church was already known and understood. And this thing that Yeshua came to build was not entirely new. And in fact, that word build in the Greek might also mean rebuild. Another clue. No controversy when the translator chooses the Greek word ecclesia. So Yeshua wasn't speaking Greek, Aramaic or Hebrew probably. In fact, we have lots of historical sources that say the book of Matthew was originally in Hebrew. But yet, apparently the idea of using the Greek word ecclesia to translate whatever Yeshua spoke is already settled. There's no controversy about it. So consider that this idea is entirely new. So, should we rebuild? All right, so I'm looking for more clues, and if I'm looking for something that already exists, what do they have? The Old Testament. So go there and look. I found a connection to this verse. This is the second time church is mentioned in the New Testament. It says, "If ye neglect to hear the church, let him be unto thee as a heathen man and a publican." Matthew 18:17. All right, so here's the connection I found. This idea here of if someone's not going to listen, you put them out of the duty. Similar ideas in this verse. In the Old Testament, this is Deuteronomy 17:12. It says, "And a man that will do presumptuously and will not hearken to the priest that standeth to minister there before Jehovah Elohim, or unto the judge, even that man shall die, and thou shalt put away the evil from Israel." So here we have the man doesn't listen to the priest and the judge, and Yeshua says that he doesn't listen to the church. And then in this passage in Matthew, Yeshua goes on to talk about wherever two agree in my name on anything, or where two or three are gathered, there I am in the midst of them. And in this verse, we have two people. We have a priest and a judge. So there seems to be a similarity between the ideas here. So is that correct? Is there a precedent, a pattern of the kingdom of Israel for the church? Here's a big clue. Here we have Stephen in Acts. He says, "This is he that was in the church in the wilderness with the angel which spake to him in Mount Sinai. And with our fathers he received the lively oracles to give unto us." So here we have Stephen calling the camp of Israel in the wilderness a church. Now we have Acts in the Greek, and the word there is ecclesia. Was it correct that the word was ecclesia there, and their little camp in the wilderness was a church. So now I'm looking for a precedent of translating Hebrew into Greek and using ecclesia, and looking for what that Hebrew word was in the Old Testament. And I can use Septuagint for that. All right, Septuagint. That was a Greek translation of the Torah commissioned by Ptolemy II, about 300 BC. And it was, right, so it used the word ecclesia to translate certain words in Hebrew. And that word was kahal. So here's what kahal means. I use a work called the Ancient Hebrew Lexicon of the Bible quite a bit. It goes back to the pictoglyphs. According to it, it means a gathering of sheep to shepherd. All right, so you have the shepherd, and all the sovereignty and decision making is summed up in the shepherd, and then you have the flock gathered around him. The shepherd cares for the flock. That is what was translated as ecclesia. My wife's giving me pointers. All right. Can you guys see all right? Yeah. Okay. All right. So the interesting thing is ecclesia is only ever translated in the Torah from kahal. But kahal is not always translated as ecclesia. Sometimes translators of the Septuagint translate it as synagoge or synagogue, which is where we get the word synagogue from. And another word that they often translated as synagogue and synagogue was sedah. That means see the door, literally, by the pictures, but idiomatically it means a group with a common testimony. And I have some pictures on the next slide, which I'll try to explain how that moves from the pictures to the literal meaning, or idiomatic meaning. Anyway, so I was looking at all the places where kahal is translated to ecclesia versus synagogue, and it seemed to me that the translators of the Septuagint followed a decision tree, which went something like this. If the verse having kahal in it was something they could do within the exile, then it became part of the synagogue, or the synagogue, and they translated it as synagogue. But if it wasn't something they could do in exile, and they had to wait for the Messiah to come back and restore the kahal, then it became ecclesia. And this, I think, set up a conflict for when Messiah came back to reestablish kahal. He would have to take all those pieces back from the synagogue. And I think we read about some of that conflict in the New Testament. All right, so another thing this did is it intimately linked the idea of ecclesia with the idea of Messiah. So when Peter says, I think you're Messiah, and Yeshua says, okay, I'm going to build my church or my ecclesia, they already have this link in their head, and they know exactly what he's talking about. And I just want to point out that I'm not saying the translators invented this theology, but they solidified it. They're providing a snapshot of the popular theology of the day. All right, so here's a diagram I made. So you have the tabernacle here. This is called the house of Yehovah. It's where he lives amongst his people. So if you have the shepherd in the middle of the flock, you got to have a house for him, right? And then we have the people, all right? Aaron and Moses, they would camp at the east gate of the tabernacle, and occasionally they would have some judgments that they had to give to the people, or some community matter they would need to settle, and they'd call all the people. They would blow these 2 silver trumpets. The people would gather at the east gate at the camp of Aaron and Moses. They'd share the word, and anyway, so all of that whole system together, Yehovah in the midst, tabernacle, Aaron the judge, and Moses. I got those backwards. Aaron's the priest, Moses is the judge.
That's my bad.
Yeah, a limit on my editor. Okay, and then the people gathering, they see the door of the tabernacle. They're bearing witness to the judgments of Yehovah. And, okay, so the people, they're a subcomponent of the Kahal. Kahal is everything. Just the people by themselves is Ada. All right? Okay. So here we have a pattern in the Old Testament for church, the Kahal. Okay, so the question is that a legitimate pattern? Can we apply that to the church? All right. So I have some verses here. The word kahal first occurs in Genesis 28:3. This is where Isaac blesses his son Jacob before sending him off to go find a wife. And he says, Yehovah's going to make a kahal am, which is a church of a single ethnicity, come from you. And then on the way, Jacob meets Yehovah at Bethel, and Yehovah himself tells him, you're going to have a kahal goyim, or a church of Gentiles, come from you. And then, continuing on with the story, we get to the Exodus and the first Passover. And here we see the kahal actually come into being. When you see the story of the lambs getting slaughtered, each home was to get a lamb and slaughter it and put the blood on their house. That's the first instance of the word kahal being used to describe people doing something in the Old Testament. So here we have the kahal, or the church, being birthed in the Exodus. And how did it get born? You had the blood of the lamb cover individual homes. It was birthed in individual homes. All right, and continuing on. All right, so here's my little picture. So this is the birth of the kahal, the church in the Old Testament. All right, so here we have a prophecy in Jeremiah 16:14-16. And this is speaking of Messiah, what he's going to do. It says, you guys are in exile, but Yehovah is going to gather you from everywhere you've been scattered. And it's going to be just like the first Exodus, but even bigger. And he says, I'm going to send out fishers of men to fish you, and then afterward hunters to hunt you. And that, looking at that verse in the Septuagint, send is apostello. So you have connection with the apostles. And a further connection, and Yeshua seems to cite this verse when he tells the apostles what he's going to make them, which is fishers of men. Right, and then, is that the only reference, or do we have it more? We do. Here's one of them. I had a lot more, but time, and my editor. Okay, so, but it's all over in Messianic prophecies, comparing Messiah and his work to the first Exodus. Here we have one that's often cited. It talks about the shoot of the root of Jesse. And so that's commonly understood as applying to Yeshua. But then the next verse says, in that day I'm going to gather you the second time. The first time being the first Exodus. So Yeshua came to do something, and what he's doing is going to follow the pattern of the first Exodus and the camp in the wilderness. All right, and then let's see. Okay, so Yeshua and the Lamb. We already know that he's is our Passover lamb, right? But same thing, the first Passover lamb birth is the same thing Yeshua birth. Okay, so a lamb in each household means the church was born in homes. Should we expect it to be birthed in homes again the second time? I think so. It's going to follow that pattern. So when Yeshua was resurrected, where did he go? He didn't go and disrupt a synagogue service. He didn't go and disrupt a temple service. No, he came to a home where his disciples had gathered. Okay. And so this is, this is also in the same time frame of Passover, the yearly Passover. All right, and then what else? We have the conversion of the Gentiles in the house of Cornelius. It's another house where the church was born. So we have the Kahal Goyim finally coming to fruition also in a home. Okay. All right, so the church is born in a home, and I see a lot of families here, each with a home. I think each of you can birth a church in your home. Okay. So after they left Egypt, Yehoah told them how to structure their homes. Numbers 2:2 says, I'm paraphrasing, every person camp next to the ensign of your fathers. That means you have the whole camp is one family, one intergenerational camp. They're all camped together, and within that, each generation is camped next to their father, and the next generation is camped next to their father. And in Luke 22:28 through 30, you have this inference by Yeshua. He says to his 12 apostles, 12 disciples, I'm going to have you sit on the 12 thrones of the tribes of Israel. So he seems to be inferring that he's going to reestablish the same structure. If you continue and read in Numbers 2, it seems to say that it would look something like this. You have the 12 tribes and around the tabernacle at a little distance, and then you have the camp of Levi closer to the tabernacle. And this was the structure that he wanted his people to live in. And this is the structure that they took into the promised land, began to take over their inheritance with. And Exodus 23:30 says that little by little he will fight for you to take your inheritance as you increase. Okay, so when Yoah gave that instruction, they were camped like this, and I think being camped like this is important. If you look at Acts 1:4, you have the disciples gathered together in the same house. Yeshua says, wait here until I send you the Holy Spirit. Again, that's a paraphrase. So he seems to like them being gathered together. And then if you read about when the Holy Spirit came on Pentecost in Acts 2, you see again, yes, they had waited there. They were still in the same place, in the same house, all sitting together in the same house when the Holy Spirit fell. And being gathered together, just like in Exodus 23:30, he added to them. They had been at 120, and he added 3,000. So I guess Yehoah's definition of a little is a little bit more than my definition of a little. I think that each family here could grow a church in their home that mirrored the Acts 2 church. Okay, so let's zoom in a little bit. Here's the camp of Levi. You can read about that in Numbers 3. So notice Aaron and Moses, their camps were at the east gate. And let's zoom in a little more. So you probably are all familiar with the story of Achan. They figured out somebody in the camp had sinned, and they went from tribe to tribe, family to family, house to house to find again. So this provides kind of a zoom down through the different levels of the structure of the camp. And I'm going to start with the tent, the family tent. So here we have Achan with his little standard, and you've got the tent pole and the tent walls. Now, the tent pole, it's actually an image of a glue lamp. If you build, you probably know what that is. It's a bunch of little pieces of wood glued together to make a bigger piece of wood. I think that's important for what I'm going to say next. Also, keep in mind, if you read about construction of the tent Yehovah was going to live in, the tabernacle, he demands tent poles that are 15 feet high and 2.5 or 2.25 feet in diameter, made of acacia wood. The biggest acacia trees in that area are not big enough to make a timber like that. And it would have weighed almost 1.25 tons. And where does it say they got the wood? It says, it doesn't say they went out and found the biggest trees and come down and cut timbers. It says they had to make it out of donations from people in the camp. So, all right, I'm sure all you men out there have a collection of wood scraps. Does anybody by chance have a 15-foot timber that weighs 1.25 tons? No, probably not. They probably would have glued wood together like this. This technology has been in the Middle East since 3400 BC, and so they would have known how to do this, what they would have done. Anyway, enough of that rabbit trail. Okay, Hebrew, father, Av, strength of the house, tent pole. And then you have mother, M, strong liquid or glue. So together they hold up the structure of the tent. Okay, son, Ben, continuing of the house or tent panel. What's the connection? The tent panels are always wearing out, and they're always making new ones to replace them and also to make the tent bigger. And, all right, so sons are making the walls. Daughter, bat, sign of the house or ensign. Now, daughter does not have a separate entry in the ancient Hebrew lexicon of the Bible, so I had to study the pictoglyphs to figure it out. So, disclaimer there. Okay, so as far as ensigns go, if you read the blessing of Jacob over his sons, each tribe got an ensign. The tabernacle didn't have a symbol per se, but it had a color pattern, blue, scarlet, and purple. And then, all right, so this tent, this is the basic structure. As you scale it, you still have the father and the mother hold up the main structure, and when you scale it into a camp, it becomes the gate complex. And then sons going around forming the perimeter boundary of the camp. That's all the tribes camped around the edge of the boundary of the camp around the tabernacle. And then the ensign, daughters in the middle. So sons, you know, there's a reason they like to play with bows and arrows. They're supposed to fight off the enemy. And daughters, they just look pretty, so they get to be the emblems. And then father and mother, eventually we die of old age, and then we have our firstborn take over for us. Okay, so at this level, connecting to the New Testament, you have a church in the house of Aquila and Priscilla. There's a verse that says that they took this guy in and expounded to him on the gospel. That was Apollos. So that would match the family tent level of the structure of church. Then, okay, so here we have Achan's father is Carmi and his grandfather is Zabdi. And it appears that in Joshua, verse 18, Zabdi was still alive because he had a single household with his sons, his grandchildren, and his great-grandchildren all living in it, but Achan had his own tent. So all these people had they're on tents, but they're in one household. And, all right, so that's quite the intergenerational home there. You can't see in this, if Abbie had more than one son, they would have encamped in the boundary around it, but he only had one son, and Carmi only had one son, Achan, and yeah, hopefully I don't offend anybody in here by saying that if you have one child, they might be a little bit selfish. Achan, he was a little bit selfish. Maybe they had something to do with it. I don't know. Okay, the intergenerational home, that seems to be the model of the camp, of the church in the wilderness. That is not the model that is promoted in our culture. So keep that in mind. We have lots of problems, social problems in our culture. We have problems with people having a low birth rate. We have problems with elders not having a purpose and being discarded in rest homes. How much of that problem would be solved if we followed the biblical model for how to live together? All right, so another thing I'll point out here is when they began to take over the land, different families would take over a whole village. So like Bethlehem, for example, was a family village. So connecting to the New Testament, the church at the level of the city might be equivalent to this, like the church of the city of Ephesus. Okay, so then let's go to how a church dies. All right, Joshua 23, 12 to 13 has a warning. And it says, so remember Exodus 23:30 says, Jehovah's going to fight for you. Joshua 23, 12, 13 says, if you don't maintain the structure of the camp, then he's not going to fight for you. And you are going to perish. And we know how that turned out. That turned out as exile and no shepherd in the middle of the people. They had to wait for the shepherd to come back, the Messiah. Okay, so what does that look like? Well, we have a few sons, they stayed home, and then we have other sons that left home and went out to dwell amongst the heathen. And then we had heathen moving in, coming into the home, making snares in your midst. All right, so this is what not to do. Don't scatter, gather. Yeshua said, if you're not with me, you're against me. If you're not gathering, you're scattering. Right? So he wants you to be with him. He wants you to gather. He doesn't want you to scatter. Okay, so sending your grown sons out to dwell amongst the heathen. Culture says that's what you should do. The Bible does not say that's what you should do. The Bible says if you do that, you will be ensnared and end up falling away from the worship of Yehovah. And I've heard many stories from people that has happened to. They are now empty nesters. They sent their children off to dwell amongst the heathen, and when they fell away and they're not following Yehovah. Okay, so having a church in your home, having it grow and stay healthy means you continue to gather. You don't scatter. And you got part of your job as maintaining the church in the home is as Aaron and Moses, they were guarding the tabernacle, is you guard your home as a place where Yehovah wants to dwell. You don't let stuff that is not subject to Yehovah into your home. Okay, so now, I'm going to summarize here. What is church? Church is a redo of what Yehovah built from the first Exodus. It is birthed in your home, and it is maintained and grows by people, the leaders of the home, the parents, gathering their children and maintaining a barrier between their home home, the church in their home, and the world, secularism, heathenism. Okay, I am going to hand this off to Vanessa, my partner in this endeavor. Okay.
So I'm sharing practical tips for your church. There's a lot of aspects about running your church. There is a lot of aspects about leading your family. But today we're just going to focus on these. Unity. Mark 3:23 says, "A house divided against itself will fall." When I first got married, I was an angry mess. I grew up in a very, I guess you could say, feminist-leaning home, to where it was like, men are the worst, and that kind of became my core belief. And so, having married into a healthy marriage, I struggled with having my husband lead, and we were not prospering. Our children were learning bad habits. We would fight a lot. It was a mess. There was no unity there. Discipleship is John 8:31. Teaching the word, praying, freedom is that means bringing in the freedom of Christ, being able to walk in obedience. So if you abide in my word, you are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And that's what we want to bring into our home through discipleship. With teaching, Deuteronomy 4:9, we read, "Gather the people before me to hear my words, so that they may learn to fear me all the days they live on the earth, and they may teach them to their children." So, teaching, being on your guard and diligently watching yourselves, so that what you are teaching your children, what you are intaking yourself, is all pointing to how the Lord wants us to live. And then shepherding, John 10:11-14-15 says, "I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and they know me. I lay down my life for my sheep." This reminds me of being able to he connects with us on a deeper level. He cares for us, and he lays his life down for us, which it feels like we kind of do that as parents, having to lay down our desires, our wants and needs for feeding our children, taking care of them, taking them out to the hallway when they're being disruptive, and not like missing out on some of the teaching, things like that. That's laying down our life for our sheep. And so we'll take a further look at kind of each one of those. And so with unity, it starts with the mother and the father. So I can speak as far as mothers. Quick synopsis, like I had mentioned before, just having that trouble in being able to submit to my husband, and what that would look like was causing a lot of trouble. The saying of happy wife, happy life, that is not up to your husband to make that come true. It's up to you as a woman. You are responsible to connect with the Lord, to rely on him to build your needs up. You can't rely on your husband to fulfill your needs, or to figure out what's wrong with you, or to make you happy. That comes from the Lord, and that was something that I had to learn. Also, having a lot of kids back to back was tiring on me, because I felt like I was being stripped away from my career and what I wanted, and it left me with a lot, like lack of sleep, postpartum stuff, all that kind of stuff. And around probably when I had Aviva, so child 5 out of my 6, the Lord brought this verse to me, Isaiah 40:11, that talks about he leads those who are nursing with extra care. And it just really touched me because I felt like I can't connect with the Lord like I used to. I can't, pray and worship like I used to. I'm always interrupted. My attention is always gathered elsewhere. I feel guilty that I can't connect with the Lord like I could. And he led me to this verse and saying, you know what? I get it. I don't require a lot from you. And I know it's hard and you're barely, a lack of sleep and all that stuff. But I am gentle with you. I care about you. It's okay. And I can let Lowell speak as far as like fathers and what that might look like.
Okay, so I mentioned Matthew 18. Matthew 18 talks a little bit about how churches function. After he mentions, if you don't listen to the church, he talks about wherever you have two who are in agreement, or two or three who are gathered, and what do you get? You get him dwelling in your midst. You get whatever you bind on earth is bound in heaven, and loosed on earth is loosed in heaven, and whatever you ask will be given to you. But the important thing is both of you coming together in his name and in agreement. And if that context is your home, at the home level of the church, then the other person is your spouse. So it's important as a father or as a husband to cultivate unity with your spouse. We have another model of this in the Garden of Eden. If you think about it, the Garden of Eden was a sort of tabernacle, and just like Aaron and Moses were guarding the tabernacle in the wilderness, Adam and Eve had to guard the tabernacle of Eden. And Adam, he got a little bit of practice at tending the garden before he got Eve, right? So a little bit of cultivating skills is all you need. And it took me a while to learn that I needed to cultivate unity in Vanessa. And after I figured that out, and I purposely would have conversations with her about deep things and help her figure things out. And it's really borne fruit. And so it was a little bit of both of us. It wasn't just her being angry as me not realizing that part of my role was cultivating her. But okay, so like a practical tip, if you are a mother and you just give birth, and our wider culture says, well, okay, the man and the wife are just going to share everything and do everything equally. But the Bible says after the baby is born, the mother is unclean for 40 days for a boy and 80 days for a girl. What does that mean? That means the father takes over, or not just the father, the whole intergenerational home takes over all the duties that the mom had. It takes over caring for all the other kids, making meals, cleaning the house, all that. And mom just gets to focus with baby, and she gets room service, meals brought to her, deluxe care. And it's not promoted in our culture, and it's problematic. As an analogy, it's like, this is for you men out there that watch sports, and I don't watch sports, so forgive me if I mess it up. It's like football. The mom is the running back. She's got the football. She's got to take it down to the end zone to make a goal. And dad is offensive tackle. He's got to obliterate every obstacle to that, right? Okay, everything else that is not baby is now on father. Mama's just got baby.
Yeah, so it took him learning and me learning what our roles were. Both of us came from very broken homes. We didn't have the structure in place like biblically we should have. And so we've been having to learn this from scratch by trial and error. Another part of it is your marriage. One key component was praying together. We pray every night together. We also learn together in fellowship. Right now we're going through a series on healing, what that looks like, how we can operate that in today's age. And so learning together things about the Lord, doing Bible studies together. Another thing is following that leadership role. So one thing that I had trouble with is being able to not interject, which I still have trouble doing, as you could tell. I'm like, do this, do that better. And one thing that we talked about was being able to show that unity with our children. And we are the helpers. We are going to be helping our husbands. But what that can look like is how you do it can look very differently. And what has worked for us, because I would tell him, like, if I don't tell you right there and then, though, like, I'll forget. That's my brain. I will forget. And then we forget about it, and then it happens again. So we thought up of a way to do this, is if there is something that's happening and I have a different view or a different objection or whatnot, I will text him right there and then, and he has the option to read the thing and follow my leading or receive influence from me, or choose to, maybe discuss it later. But that way it's been helpful with our children, so that I'm not being like arguing in front of our children about a certain thing. So that's one tip that's been helpful. Another is sharing your vulnerabilities and concerns with each other, and listening with empathy, listening to hear their feelings behind it versus just wanting to solve everything or wanting to dismiss something. Giving each other and with that, I have my little table here of tips and helpful stuff. Under the Unity little paper there, I wrote a website that's really good. If you guys are interested in learning a little bit more about speaking to each other with empathy and what that looks like practically, the Gottman Connect series is pretty good. It's just a email-based website webinar type of thing that you can do. And then also prioritizing giving each other time off, whether this looks like micro breaks. For example, we started getting in the habit of me saying, I'm gonna go check the mail. And that was code word for, I need to get out of here, I'm overstimulated, and I don't want to scream or yell or hurt anybody. And so he knew that I needed 5 to 10, 15 minutes to just get away. And whether I just went outside and just walked back and forth till I stopped fuming, or actually drove to the post office and checked the mail, I would come back, and that time was for me to gather myself, calm down, and be ready to face my day again. And that can look like, that's when we had a lot of littles, and we didn't have the option of taking longer time. Now that my kids are bigger, we can implement longer periods of time, which looks like a couple of hours a week where we just guard sacredly that time for each other. So what does that look like for you, Lowell?
I go to the library and work on a puzzle.
Yes.
Paul's seen me there.
Yeah. He'll go for 2 hours. I don't call him. He does not work on anything, even if he has a list as long as a mile long of things that he needs to do at home. He has 2 hours a week where he knows he doesn't have any responsibilities. He can just do whatever he wants. And so do I. Mine looks different. Mine looks, I kind of plug it in wherever I can. I'll go connect with a friend, have coffee with her, or go to the gym and have like the longer workout sessions and a long shower, because we don't have a shower yet at our home. So being able to honor weekly time off for each other is very important. The next one is discipleship. What does that look like? Letting your kids know that they can do it when something is hard. And pointing them to God, the Father, helping them through their trials. Hebrews 12:11. No discipline seems enjoyable at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it yields a harvest of righteousness and peace to those who have trained by it. So that can look a little bit different for different aspects of life. Another part of discipleship is prayerfully walking alongside and helping, discipling them and helping them to lean on God when things get tough. Developing a flow movement from being able to, so what this develops is, okay, I'm going to teach you how to manage yourself and stay disciplined so that then you can go on, and when you become an adult and you can carry that with you and to your children as well. And so Romans 12:2 looks like renewing your mind, what that looks like for our home. So it says, Romans 2:12, renewing your mind. What that looks like for us is scripture verses blasted everywhere. We listened to this podcast or presentation from Jason Christoph, and he talks a little bit about, I don't know if you want to share.
He just studies the way that corporations target people to get them to buy their products, and there's like a 1-2 punch that's he's followed throughout from ancient history all the way to today, and it's like feed them sugar or coffee or drugs, and then put in the subliminal messaging. We don't do the drugs.
We don't do the drugs, but we figured we can take that psychology of like being able to, like, your mind is influenced by everything around you. And so what that looks like practically for our home is I just plaster Word of God everywhere. On our doorposts, on our walls, on our restroom, everywhere I can, I'm posting it. Whether they're reading it and memorizing it, or whether it's just, you're just passing it by and you're seeing it by the corner of your eye, it's still going in. And so that's what that looks like for us. Being able to discipline your child or disciple your child is stretching them. Being able to help them learn to lean into pain and discomfort, because life is about that. I am a therapist by trade, so I'm going to be sharing what that might look like with big emotions. Physiologically, it takes about 15 minutes for your body to calm down when you have a big feeling. So anger, confusion, just anything huge, it takes about 15 minutes for your body to calm down. And so being able to know that piece of it can help you when your child has a huge feeling, or your spouse, and is like shut down, flooded emotionally, can't, you tell them, no, you cannot have candy before dinner. Child explodes, and you expect them to right away answer you or reason with you, and it doesn't always work. So knowing that this is how your body reacts is letting them have that time to cool down. And being able to empathize with them. So that's a really important key is, okay, I see that you're angry or sad that you can't have the candy, but it still needs to happen. This is the rule that we have of, you eating healthy, and so you still have to get your chore done. What consequences look like in your home will be different. If you're interested in what it looks like for us in our home, I have our charts here. So we're talking about discipline. I have our family rules written out so they can always be looking at them. We'll repeat them every once in a while so that they know what to expect. They have little brains. They're not going to remember all the time. So having in there and reminding them occasionally is very helpful. I think about what he was talking about each like group had different tasks. Like one group was in charge of management of all the things, and then one was like the maintenance person. And I think of this as part of probably what they would have used was like so many people having a chore chart, knowing what to expect and what tasks they need to do. Being able to invite them into earning, we have a little ticket reward system which teaches them the fact that they can contribute to the family, but also on a microcosm of financial, like we have our little, like the kids can, if they want to not do their chore, they can pay their sibling 20 tickets, do the dishes for me. So it's like twofold there. but being able to teach them discipline. And then with the last point, being able to teach them how to go on. With our oldest, we've had him read the book that we have here. I think it's called To Raise a Child, and it's ways for fathers to connect with sons. And we had him read a parenting book, like a little intro parenting book, so that he knows how to treat his siblings when we're not there, how to treat his own kids when he grows up. And so being able to continue that momentum for them. And some really great resources that I have for discipline is Nicholeen Peck's Self-Government, which teaches the kids to use certain phrases. So if they have, if they're asked to do something, and it's all there, you can read it and all the different stuff like that, but it gives them a specific way to answer, and if that is not answered, then there's a consequence that comes into play. And so there's books that we have there that you can kind of look at if you're interested in. The next one is teaching. So I break this down into 5 main things: psychological, biological, social, and spiritual. Teaching your children all these things. So psychological, handling your emotions, teaching them how to speak and argue correctly. Biological, eating for fuel, drinking water because it's healthy for your system, your skin, everything. Movement, hygiene, sexuality. That's a big one that a lot of people don't talk about. And we did a lot of research. And I was like, we will get this right. We probably won't. We'll probably get it wrong still. But Lowell and I, we went through, I gathered maybe like 30 books, and we scanned them all and looked at what their content was, and found some really, really great resources that are Bible-based, scientifically based. There's different levels depending how old your child is. There's also some, like one called a series, Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. We live in a society where we have computers, and so teaching our kids how to have self-discipline for when you do see something, how to react to that, what to do. So I have those up there as well. Socially, how to speak to others, knowing that how you speak with others and interact with others, you're representing Yeshua, you're representing your church, your family, and you're representing yourself. And so I also have some on that, social skills books, stuff like that. And then spiritually, well, what does it look like spiritually for us to be teaching our children?
Well, every Shabbat, we altogether don't always get together, but we do. We do a little teaching in our home. We play worship songs together. I have come up with an activity for my older children who read. We take the Parsha and I pick out quotes from it, and then they have to do a scavenger hunt and find the verse reference. And they get a reward when they do that. Younger children, I have them watch a YouTube video. I use Teach Torah to Kids. Torah portion has a little summary with nice graphics and narration, so they get that. And then, while I'm teaching, they play with Play-Doh to give their fingers something to do and give them something to build to express their understanding of what I'm talking about. So I think the last time I was talking about the menorah and how that relates to how we live together as a family with Yeshua in our midst, and one of them they had menorah Play-Doh.
And it's special Play-Doh. They can only use it that hour for that's the only thing they can use it for. So they're excited about it when they get to do it. And we also have, teaching them how to pray. We have a prayer box. So right now the box broke, but I have 3x5 cards that I write somebody's prayer request, and each kid gets 2 or 3 that they get, and we pray. They get to pray however they want for that. So we'll have prayer for the peace of Israel, or for the peace of Jerusalem. We have make sure Auntie Lana is able to have a healthy baby, things like that, to where they can do that on their own. There's also some they can put in there. So Joanna's favorite request lately is praying that the Lord gives us rainbows. And so that's in there too. I do have some resources there for, if you might not be super theological and leading your family into that the kind of way that my husband does, but if you do want something that's like structured and easy to process with kids, I have some books up there that are really helpful with having that just once a day, being able to lead your family. With the Nancy Campbell and her husband have written these books specifically for that, bringing the Word of God at each meal even. There's also one for moms specifically. It's a homeschooling program that teaches Bible. She's actually Torah observant as well and lives in Spadina. She used to live in Anchorage, but that curriculum is really awesome, and I set it out there too if you guys are wanting to look at it. Last one is shepherding. So the difference between shepherding and discipleship is, so for most, a person who's marked by gentleness, care, and comfort, all godly attributes, is shepherding. But they don't always get balanced with being direct and challenging and rebuking, which comes with discipleship. And it's important to have both for our children. We can't escape the influence of our culture that our culture has on our values. It's important to be able to have both in our home. We don't want to value comfort over character, but we also don't want to be so focused on character that we forget to bring that comfort and love and joy into our home. And so I see shepherding as that piece of it is, primarily highlighting the character and commitment of our shepherd to show comfort to the sheep. And so a shepherd is a person who tends the herd, feeds them, guards them, takes care of them. But a shepherd is focused on developing happy customers, contentment. Having occasional heart connection with our kids is what that looks like for us. So what does that look like for us that we've been trying to implement?
We we're trying to make it as often as we can, but we have our kids come and spend one-on-one time with us. Younger ones we'll just have on our lap. We'll ask them, what would you like to do this week? What did we do last week that you liked? And other questions. Vanessa found this book that has a guide of different questions to ask your children, which is really helpful for me because it doesn't come naturally. I'm not as nurturing as Vanessa.
The book is there as well. It's titled Self-Government and Parenting Techniques. Also, we've integrated asking forgiveness to our children when we've wronged them. This has been an important piece for us because being able to ask them how we can be better, like individualizing our parenting for them. Like there's a blanket parenting, right? They all have to follow our rules. They all have to do chores. They all have to do this. But being able to receive influence from them for their particular personality or their particular likes or interests has been important to develop that emotional connection with our children. And we want to point them to that because the Lord wants us to know that He's the one that we can come to for support, and we want to show them that that's what it should be. That's what shepherding is. We want to be that for them as we point them then to the Lord. And why it's important is because a healthy flock will grow. If they are loved and cared for, they're gonna want to, come back. They're gonna want to bring their friends back. They're gonna feel excited about having others join you in your activities. And that looks like creating family traditions, game night, going out on hikes. That's what that looks like for us in our family. They'll remember those fun memories and they'll want to stay connected with you. We talked about, how you break down a church is they start leaving, they start disconnecting. The way practically that looks like is connecting with your children and being disciplined and teaching them. And they're gonna learn that when they have problems, they're gonna come to you as adults. They're gonna ask you for they're gonna want your influence. They're gonna ask you for, tips and wisdom for raising their children. They're gonna want you to be their safe space, even as adults. And this is how that is created. This is how we keep our church in our camp base. And you are going to raise adults who will want to keep coming back, and they will keep seeking you out for a lifetime. They will involve you in their home as you get older. They'll feel safe with you helping with their children. And so, yeah, that's what that is.
Okay, so conclusion, we'll sum up what we said. All right, so we figured out what church is, figured out how it's structured, how to make it successful. So started with the first Passover, this Passover, keep that in mind. Also, you have the benefit of this whole pattern with the trajectory, and you can follow that. The first Passover, they didn't know what was going to happen. They thought maybe they'd go out in the desert and come back in 3 days and be slaves again, but he had a whole plan set out for them, right? And he has a plan set out for you. And this Passover, remember that we live in a culture of exile, and it's filled with snares and false gods, and we need to guard each of our homes and grow the church in each of our homes. So, and we need to continue to participate in the ministry of Yeshua. He is a good shepherd, and we are his little minion shepherds, right? So, let's put that into practice. Watch out for those snares of our culture that are telling us not to do this, not to follow this model. Leave church up to the professionals in the building with the IRS organization. Remember, it might feel daunting at first, but Yehovah promises that if you do this and you keep his church and guard it, that he will fight for you and he will provide you the resources that you need when you need them as you increase.
And so with ours, it was this unity with, this way, and being able to connect with them this way as well. We just wanted to humbly share our tips that we've learned, and it'll look different for your home, and if you feel guilty that you don't do these things, guilt is not a bad thing. It's just pointing us to change, and you can do it with the Lord's structure that he's already put in place. And so we challenge you with, maybe implementing 1 or 2 different things that you learned today for your family. Thank you. Now,
Yeah, these are the dates and the place. Okay, so Shavuot is our next thing. It's coming up May 30th, and we have it the whole weekend. May 30th is a Friday, June 2nd is a Monday, and Shavuot is on the Sunday. So it's going to be as functionally like a miniature Sukkot. We have it for half the time. We had it for Sukkot last year, so it's going to be half the cost, half the volunteer effort. Sukkot, again, is at the same place, and we have dates, October 6th, October 15th. And last day of them is read. Gordon is going to be teaching, and he's going to be taking all the details of people who want to reserve and participate and volunteer. He'll make it happen. And unless I misspoke, Gordon, speak now, forever hold your peace.
We spoke. I was going to talk about making reservations. But I guess I'm taking reservations.
Okay. That's
No,
all.
we'll cover it.
All right. Who can I volunteer to pray for the food? Mark. Oh wait, music. Sorry, music. That's right, music.
I did have one comment about this talk that we gave today, and that is, like, Linda and I look like we feel like we're the grandparents. Our children are growing, we have children here, we have grandchildren here, but you kind of left us out of your talk.
Sorry, I said. Okay, so you have a place and Yahuwah's plan for church, and it is not sitting alone, forgotten in a rest home.
Right.
It is leading the household, continuing to sit in the gates.
Okay.
And continuing to do the same, discipling, shepherding your adult children, so that, and fostering shepherding to them. You know, how am I doing with you, son? Am I, supporting you like I need to? Did I offend you lately in any way? How can we change this? Like, how can I help you? Same principles, whether you're old or young, and even with your own grandchildren as well. Asking them, telling them, when I was your age, this was really tough, but this is how I did it. These are my tips that I can give you.
And part of that when you get older is legacy planning, which means different in the Bible than in the world. Legacy planning means planning for how your household is not going to scatter after you die, and part of that is training up the one that is going to take your place in the gates after you're gone.
Well, even, I would say, outside of your own biological family, you still have a place as the elders, as grandparents, to many of the children here.
We've kind of had to create,
Yeah.
not all of us
It's
have.
not right, and that's part of the American culture, is not necessarily that kind of idea of we're not blood related, but we're still family. And so that's the whole idea of the Gentile and the Jew coming together is, okay, now we're one big family. And Jesus is like, okay, how are you going to family each other?
Yeah.
So I think you're still a part of our lives, whether you want to be or not.
No, I want to be.
Okay. Any other comments, questions, or concerns?
Say that in the native tribes, the young men would hunt, and the seasoned men would draw the battle plans for the young men to hunt, because they've been on the hunt before. They know exactly all the details and plans and strategies. So I just like to comment on your guys' place. Those that are seasoned are able to draw strategies, battle plans, and help those of us that are not as far along in our journey to be able to execute those and be able to be successful. And that's invaluable, and it's something I want to give honor to as well, because it was in the Israelite culture and traditions, it was those who were seasoned who helped the younger ones and give them the strategies, the battle plans to be successful, and that's extremely important. Without that, you have a lost generation. And so I appreciate that, and it is something that's not honored in our culture, as it is in other cultures, like Asian cultures are very good in honoring those that have, gone before them.
Right. Yeah, our culture could benefit quite a bit from integrating different generations together. The American ideal, I think, is, the two-parent family with, 2.5 kids in their own house with a white picket fence. That was invented, I think, in about the 1950s at the height, the golden age of America's prosperity. And what do we see in the Bible? When they became prosperous, well, they turned away and they rebelled, but yet that's our ideal. That's where our ideal came from. And I don't think it's necessarily correct. Any other comments before we have questions? Gordon?
The only thing that I would say, and this is great, wonderful presentation for both of you working together. Great.
Sounds
It's-
like,
it's no, the only thing I would say is,
Okay.
toss out the word church. No, really, I mean, great,
Didn't hear what you said.
toss out the word church
toss out the word church.
because it's an English word and it doesn't have the same meaning as ecclesia or kahal.
So ecclesia and kahal have a very definite picture of people, whether it be the family, whether it be the greater assembly, whether it be a smaller group of intergenerational family, that's always there. Church, the English word is, comes from the root word circe, which means a circle or a circus. I'm not making this up.
Feels
So-
like a circus at our house a lot of times.
But if you think about what church is now in the whole scheme of things, it's a realm of entertainment. It's a circus. And you have a ringleader that directs things and moves things, and people have to perform in the appropriate way. And if you're not performing in the appropriate way, then it's all disrupted. But it's that word was chosen, and it was it means circle or circus. So
It's unfortunate
Yeah.
that is the word that was chosen, and we have translations that use assembly and congregation
Yeah.
for that very reason.
yeah,
I use the word church because where we're at,
we're
stepping
all,
stones, baby
we're all-
steps.
We're all familiar with it.
Yeah.
But the whole thing is that now maybe what we should be doing with our children is training them that it isn't a church, it's an assembly, it's a body, it's the body of Christ, it's a fellowship, it is
A flock.
A flock. Yeah, these are all descriptions that are much more appropriate than a circus.
All right, Paul, then Linda, then Dave.
I really like the circles that you use to encompass the family. Looking back now, my daughters are all in their 20s. I can't roll back the hands of time and change some parenting things that I would have done, but on a very, very practical level, to protect that circle, I would never have allowed them to get on social media or have a smartphone. Because that is an access to the outside world outside of that. So as parents, in a very practical way, I highly recommend, if you want at 18 to have a smartphone, let them buy one. If you want to have a cell phone, give them a flip phone. And that's one way to protect those, because the world is constantly pulling on them at every corner, and it highly affected our three daughters. And then you touched on it too, as a parent looking back, challenge them. Challenge them at every corner, don't let them get comfortable. And I would challenge our daughters more, take them out ice camping at 20 below zero. And figure out a way for them to be challenged and step into that. And I see that in a very positive way with a lot of fishing families. Kids that were raised in fishing, they were challenged, they were uncomfortable, but they got to see the reward of that. And those of us that didn't have that kind of an advantage, we have to find ways to get the best out of them. And that's the best advice I can really give to a young parent is make sure they don't get comfortable, but challenge them, get them to grow.
Yeah, I agree with you. Smartphones, it's one of those snares. In fact, if you look up the definition of Canaanite in the Hebrew, it can also mean merchant. Mercantilism was the lifestyle of Canaanites, who were also the Phoenicians, who were famous traders. And you walk through all these stores in Homer and you can see tons of snares that you don't want in your home. Anyway, Linda.
Yes, some years ago I did a word search in like the Young's Literal Translation, and I typed in church, and I was shocked because it was not in that translation at all. And it was like, oh, this is not an original word in the scriptures, the word church. So anyway.
Dave.
The use of the word church actually was popularized by King James. King James had a list of things that the translators had to comply with, and one of them is that they had to use the word church, not congregation, because he didn't want the authority of the Church of England to be confronted, and so he insisted that that word be church. But some of the early translations, like Coverdale and others, it's congregation. It's just what happened.
Yeah, it's part of that, it's like a psyop, right? To take the authority of heaven out from under you and put it in the hands of professional clergy. Kind of the same idea of, instead of taking your spiritual weapons and spiritually disarming you, gun control, right? Put it in the hands of the professionals. It's not for the common people. Same kind of idea. Anybody else? Liz?
Just gonna make a quick comment. I really enjoyed how you guys presented your wisdom and the idea too of the way that Yahweh presented things is not upside down. It's the world system, the pyramidal upside down, and how that's expressed in marriage, where you have the top pyramid and then that trickling down. It's the opposite in Yahweh's kingdom, which is a tree.
Right.
And the way that he created it had a systematic order, and that order is that he is the root system of that tree, and he grows up out of the tree grows up man, and out of man grows up women, and then the fruit are your children. And I think that system, understanding it in that way, submission in that way, is I think a lot more beautiful and sacred. That sacred order of Yahweh, where we're actually flowing together as one tree. That success of a man is a success of a woman, is a success of children, and it's grounded and rooted in Yeshua and the Messiah. And so we find our truth and identity in Him, and then we grow out of that, creating a family structure, which is not subservient and it's not pyramidal. It's sacrificing and absorbing out of the nourishment and nutrients of the Lord Yahweh. So I just want to comment on that because you guys touched on that during this coach. And I thought that was how I got information.
It would. Actually, it got edited out.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's great.
It would have been 3 hours.
It would have been 3 hours. Yeah. We would have gone off all kinds of rabbit trails, but yeah. Going along with what you're saying, I'll just pictoglyphic meaning of the word Kohen, priest. You got the menorah, the tree of life. I'm the vine, you are the branches, and other things. But they all lend to that imagery there. Okay, musicians, right?
Assemble.
Yeah, Isaac.